Hello, it's Steve White here, and I'm back for a second lo-fi experience. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the first one. It's really appreciated. A lot of fun to do. Hoping to be back in the big studio soon, but in the meantime, just going to have a little bit of fun. Going to talk about something from the book this time. The book, the artless plug of The Art of Drumming, which was written by myself and Russ Tarley. We spent a lot of time and work on this, so hopefully if you've got a copy, you're appreciating and enjoying it and getting something from it. One of the things that Russ did was painstakingly transcribed a drum solo from a song that I used to do with Paul Weller, and it's called Picking Up Sticks, which, if you've never heard, sounds a little bit like this. Quite a simple track. Mainly led by the cymbals. I'm kind of pushing the cymbals. So that's just a snippet, and I can't play too much because the YouTube police will be all over me. But it's kind of driven mainly by the cymbal. Paul wanted it to be kind of up at the top end of the kit. And I took my inspiration for the rhythm from the kind of middle section, or the bridges in Space Oddity, the David Bowie tune. There's a drummer called Terry Cox, who I really, really love. Some of my favourite drummers played with David Bowie, including Woody Woodmansey, but Terry was a very early drummer, and he played like everything was kind of on that song was all led up by the cymbal, and that was my inspiration for it. Strange where you get inspiration from when you're a musician. But the rhythm was really simple. It was very, very quiet. Bass drum had a very simple pulse. So that was the thrust of the rhythm, fairly simple, until as the song kind of gained in intensity, I took a little nod to some of the funk records that I enjoyed as a young musician, still do. Music like the likes of Lonnie Liston Smith and Norman Connors, where they would change a groove, playing a beat that had like a groove where a snare drum would be playing the fourth beat of the bar, and then they would just kind of bring it in double time, sort of to pick it up. So if I demonstrate, it goes like this. So I chucked in a few kind of whitey fills, which I was able to get away with on the song, which was fun. And then as the song builds to a conclusion, we did something in the production that became quite synonymous with the live performance, in that there was a short drum break. What we did in the studio was I brought another kit down. It was a Gretsch kit, Blue Sparkle 22, 13, 16. We put it in the corner, we put some overhead mics on it, and kind of opened the sound up a little bit. And I played a rhythm across that 4/4 beat. Now what I actually did was referenced some studies that I did with Bob Armstrong, using 3-beat phrases that play across a 4-beat pulse. So if the pulse is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So the pulse is going against 4/4 in a phrase of 3. Which is something synonymous with the great Elvin Jones, who Bob was a big fan of. But I kind of appropriated it, and it came in across the groove. So I'd kind of also had an influence for it from what I call gospel beats, from being a fan of Blue Note records like Babyface Willettes and some of the early Jimmy Smith kind of tunes, where the drums were swinging, but there was almost like a sort of a New Orleans And you can hear it if you check out some of those organ-based trios. It was quite a disciplined style, and I really liked it, and there might be a tambourine. So I had a little bit of that in it, and I had a little bit of my kind of own sort of thing. And what I'll do is I'll just show you what happened, because as the crossfade comes in, it comes out of the 4/4. And becomes like a drum break that goes across the beat. So that was nice, and then it refades in, and then the outro. Great, and the song. So when we started to do this live, what actually happened was that it kind of grew, the drum break sort of grew into a drum solo, which is really unusual on a pop gig. Working for a singer-songwriter, to get a drum solo is usually the point when people go to the bar. But it became quite popular, and it was lovely of Paul to let me do it, which I really used to really enjoy it and kind of stretch out a bit. Kept me fit as well. So what would happen is that the band would kind of come down in tempo, and Steve Craddock would be playing some really nice kind of slide guitar, some sort of atmospheric sort of guitar. Damon would be kind of pumping away, and basically we'd sort of just bring the tension down, and then Paul could go for a pint or a fag, whatever he chose to do at that particular time. So it was like taking the cue, sorry, not the key. I'm playing the drums, not in the same key as those guys, and taking that cue and just bringing that kind of tempo down. And what I would do was go into something appropriating that, like swing beat. So it would go from the groove. And that would be like the intro to the drum solo. Generally, I did try to keep things kind of fairly simple, and it's talking to some of the great drummers that I've had the fortune to spend time around. When you're doing like drum solos in pop situations, it's kind of best to sort of keep things reasonably simple. I mean, it's lovely to see people sort of wailing away, but even people like Steve Smith, the great Steve Smith, and Steve Gadd and Gene Krupa would always talk about like a pulse, keeping something going that the audience could kind of relate to. So I kept that in mind as a structure. And I would go from the swing thing, and I might sort of take it down, and I might kind of do some snare drum stuff as a tribute to some of the drummers that I liked. So it might kind of sound a little bit like this. Something like that. I digress, it's just a bit of fun. But there was a structure, because the thing was, I was playing a bass drum rhythms all the way through, because it kind of keeps the whole thing together. Then sometimes I would employ another little trick, is I would invoke a samba type feel. Because samba, Brazilian music in general, is so danceable. And you just want to kind of get up and move your body, and it kind of has that element of almost like a heartbeat sort of feel to it. And you can get away with sort of doing anything. You know, you can play anything sort of rhythmically over the top of a samba pattern, and it sounds really, really cool, because you're just keeping that continuity going. And as I say, in a big venue, it sort of worked as something that I would do. and then a bit of blatant kind of ginger-esque sort of double bass drum. So what I'm trying to say is I got to have fun with this kind of situation, but I felt like knowing the environment was really, really important, and just trying to sort of maintain a bit of taste. Be tasteful when you do this kind of stuff, and know when it's appropriate to sort of put it in. So that's picking up sticks. A brief overview. Mentioned Terry Cox, didn't I? I mentioned Steve Smith, and mentioned the book, obviously, and hopefully I'll do some more, because this is quite good fun. It's fairly easy to do. So in the meantime, see you soon.